This mindful musing is going to be a sort of open awareness style meditation on a crafting object. Now, a craft object, as opposed to an art object, to me, for my definitions, what I'm working with here, is that it serves a practical purpose as well as a decorative one. And sometimes the practical aspects can be most of what's decorative about it. Something that's very well designed can have its own aesthetics, where form follows function, as the saying goes. And other things can be more decorative, but that form and function needs to find a nice balance for it to go from something that's more of an art object into more of a craft object. And what I'm using right now as my object of this meditation is actually my journal. It's the last thing I crafted, and I do have ideas about making another one, so it's a good object because it's something I've made but also want to improve. But if you have a craft project that you're planning to make and you've never made something like this before, what is good to find is the nearest prototype you possibly can. And for that, there's all kinds of things that might not seem obvious, but can be very good objects to use in a meditation. Like this sort of pencil case is actually something I looked at to think about how I would want to make a journal cover. And you can find sometimes these sorts of examples where it's not exactly the tool you want or the object you're trying to make, but it has qualities of that. So if you want to pause the video and find something to use as your object, you can. You can also do this just purely with your imagination. And that might be a bit harder though. So having an actual physical object will help give some sort of stimulus for this that otherwise it can be hard to imagine, especially if you don't know what you don't know about making this particular sort of craft. So once you have your object, the first thing we're going to do is just become aware of this present moment with the breath. Taking some nice calming breaths. They don't have to be deep or loud or anything. You can just continue breathing and simply become aware of your breath as it is, trying to observe it without influencing it, if that's possible. And if it's not, just observe that. This will be sort of similar to the open awareness meditation that I've done before, where we're going to kind of expand outward. So from the breath, we'll just expand out to feel our body, feel our posture, maybe settle in a little bit more, get more comfortable. And then become aware of all the sensations in the body. Some of those will be tied to the breath. Some of those might be connecting with our meditation object right now. Now we can expand out a little further to encompass all of the sounds we're hearing in this moment. Any smells we might be smelling, any tastes that might be in your mouth, leftovers from breakfast or your whatever last meal you've had. Now we'll kind of turn our attention, instead of focusing in on the thing, try and keep sort of a nice open awareness, but let it wander to your object. If anything else draws it, like a sound outside, something in the music or something you see, that's fine. We're going to wander to and from. We don't want our attention to become a really direct spotlight here. We want to stay nice and open and just let this kind of float in and take up as much space as it wants to take up in this moment, or as much space as it can. And I'm using the sensation of it to ground me to it right now. I can already see a sort of functional aspect that's become somewhat problematic with this from a craft perspective, and that's fine. Seeking out things that aren't working with a past prototype, or if you have something that you bought and it's not doing exactly what you want to, those are important things to note and become aware of. We'll let ourselves wander from feeling sensation, but also try and include the visual sensation as well. So as I'm feeling these objects, I'm recalling that they can sometimes present issues if I'm putting this into a bag or taking it out. They were decorative, so there is a sight versus sensation, or texture, form versus function, sort of duality there. And I have to admit that they are serving form more than function. So for the next book I want to make, I can make note of that there is a functional aspect that got lost in this form that could be improved on. And if there's aspects of it that are functional, like the very simple function of this book is that it opens and holds my books inside of it, I'm going to kind of explore how it's doing that. I can feel that these elastics are maybe not as strong as I would want. My solution here with this duct tape has actually caused some stickiness, and one of my magnets came off, so that's living somewhere else now. I forget where it ended up. It might have fallen off completely. And this clasp has gotten harder to actually use functionally as I've been using more and more craft paper, and it's exceeded the space that I originally plotted out for this to have to wrap around. So the more compressed this is, the better it fits. So that's just something to make note of, that I would have needed more room. And while this window is a fun concept and I've enjoyed it, it's also not as functional in that I'm not crazy about the way this texture feels. It's not very sturdy, and it does limit how much I can fold over this part of it. So as I'm opening my awareness to what I feel right now, I'm also opening to the past and the future. And again, this is a concept that can be a little confusing with a lot of meditation and concepts of mindfulness, where people kind of maybe confuse YOLO or Carpe Diem for mindfulness. And you can be mindful of the future. You are going to have to get and work tomorrow probably, or if it's the weekend, get some stuff done around the house or meet people. And ignoring that isn't mindfulness. It's quite the opposite. So as I'm becoming mindful of this craft object, I am thinking about how I've used it in the past, at this desk, or when I try and take it with me somewhere, and think about how I would want that to be improved in the future. Because the whole idea of craftsmanship over time is that it's getting better, it's improving, and it's improving how this object functions in your life. So I have to think about the past and the future if I'm going to become mindful about how this object is acting now and how I could make a better one. So I've got some nice things that have arisen from that, some good notes for my next craft project. And honestly, if doing this seems a little bit weird, just keep in mind that this is a good way of bringing yourself into the object. Use your tactile senses, because that's a very strong grounding influence, especially keeping this in mind. When you meditate simply on the breath, there is a tactile sensation there. It's just not using your fingers. But you are using your proprioception and you're feeling your body, which are tactile things, to feel the breath. You can physically put your hands there if you want, but these are ways of adding sensory input to your awareness of an object that you're using in meditation. So let your fingers do their thing. And if you want to continue, the sort of cues or things to remember in this are to use that tactile sensation and allow yourself to become aware of how this object exists in your life in the past, present, and future, and what might be improved or points of craftsmanship that you can add to it. Enjoy.
Those 3 bells will appear at the 15, 20, and 25-minute marks. You can use these to set an end time for your practice today. Remember that the only bad practice is the one you didn't do. So take a moment to feel some gratitude for the chance to practice today and for the efforts you put into it. Until next time.